Welcome to another episode of Disney Dust. It's DisneyDwayne here, and today we're going to be reviewing Frozen, the Broadway or West End musical now running in Singapore. Now, this is part of a tour. The two versions that I caught before were actually on, main stages that were not touring. So, of course, in comparison, the sets, in my mind coming into the show, I was not going to be expecting, the same kind of sort of epic set pieces. But still, I would say right off the bat that it was really well done. They made it work. The story was not compromised. Everything was pretty as well. But here are the differences. In Let It Go, let's go to some of the main scenes. When I saw it on Broadway, there was one big stair at the back. On the West End, which came after the Broadway show, they had the chance to improve the show, and therefore they had two stairways, and it was really, really grand seeing that. In Singapore, unfortunately, because it's a touring production, there was a little platform that kind of looked like a little bit of a stairs, but it was really a platform. But that's where the change happens when Elsa's dress slips away. Also, Anna and Kristoff, when they are crossing the bridge, um, the West End, of course, has the most impressive bridge. It's actually they actually walk across the bridge, and the bridge keeps moving. So it's impossible to fit the entire bridge into the wings, of course. So I'm sure there are different set pieces that are joined together to keep it going for so long. And also, the bridge had little traps um, where they kind of like fell through a little bit of the bridge, and so it was more intricate that way, more interesting visually. The Singapore one didn't have it. In fact, it wasn't even a full bridge. It was like a half of a bridge, occupying a half of the stage. And so there are some differences. Also, in terms of songs, of course, on Broadway, you would know that the song "True Love," sung by Anna, was there. I think on the West End they took it out, but by that time, the other duet song had taken place and had been put into the show, and it's called "I Can't Lose You." So the Singapore version, the touring version, has that same song. Um, so there are some changes, right? Many things to talk about. We're going to talk about also the fountain show, the free fountain show that happens outside at the Marina Bay Sands fountain area. There's a Frozen specific fountain show. I think there were only 3 nights of it that happened. I caught the middle one, and I'll talk about that later. In terms of the theater, we know that the theater in general at Marina Bay, well, someone from the theater industry, actually, we talk about it, and it's really not a great space for sound. But on the night that I attended, and from where I was seated, which was Grand Circle, pretty far back, the sound was actually good. It was clear, even though people were talking a little bit over the production itself. Um, Theater etiquette. We'll get into that as well. It was clear, although there were some other of my friends who talked about the fact that some areas, like underneath the balcony seats or something, the sound wasn't as clear, and it was pretty hard to hear. So I think the sound overall in this space is pretty inconsistent. You would have to have really good sound engineers in order for this challenging space. Also, in terms of view from where I was seated, um, this particular theater is different to a lot of the ones on Broadway or West End, where it's actually smaller in size, and in the circle, in the tiers, right, and the mezzanine areas, the seats are stacked on top of each other a lot more closely, and pushed together more closely. And so theater etiquette again, if someone in front of you leans forward, they're going to be obstructing your view of the stage quite soon, quite substantially as well. Here, although again people didn't follow theater etiquette as well as much, but because the seats are further back from each other, the obstruction, in fact, they barely even covered the orchestra pit. So there was no problems catching the full view of the stage. However, because the seats are farther back from each other, you do feel a little bit further back from the entire stage in general. So speaking of the theater, we might as well. So theater etiquette, that's one thing, right? So don't turn on your phones. It's very obvious when people lights come on and it's distracting, but ushers were doing a real good job actually. The ushers of stops from stopping people from taking from taking their phones out, not even taking pictures, just taking their phones out in general. um, However, I have to say, in terms of overall ticket prices in Singapore, as we know, they are one of the most expensive in the world. There are no, cheaper seats, standing seats, that standing, not standing seats, standing room, tickets. And there are also no daily, on the day purchase off rush tickets that happen here. Singapore is really expensive to go catch any theater or musical theater, especially foreign ones coming in. I feel like the organizers, in this case, Base Entertainment, can do something possibly to try and have a culture of not just the rich people or the elite people being able to watch productions. Um, Also, the thing that I found out recently is that Base Entertainment, they do bring in foreign productions, but they also uh, are in charge of the space in itself, which was a bit of a surprise to me. Marina Bay Sands. I don't know what the deal is, but they've either bought the space or they're managing the space. So, in terms of being able to sort of lower those ticket prices, especially for something like Frozen that's doing pretty well, they should be able to find ways to give a little bit more discounts to people who can't afford to see shows and or can't even afford to travel, because how else would they see these shows, right? Something to consider. Um, all right, so let's move on to the show in itself. So Gemma Ricks, I hear from a little bird that it is known actually that she was pregnant during this run, and had I not been told, I would not have noticed. However, even as far back as the circle seats, I was using my binoculars. You can tell there's a little bit of a bump, but it didn't get in her way. She was phenomenal as Elsa. Actually, I liked her version. Some people say she doesn't look like an Elsa, but in terms of how she portrayed her, I don't know. I found no issue with that. I also thought from the media that I had received and hearing her sing "Let It Go," it sounded a bit nasal. It wasn't my favorite Elsa, but on the day of watching her perform, I thought her voice was amazing. She wasn't trying too hard, and she was embellishing the moments that needed to be embellished at the right time, and pushing at the right time, and volume and all. But it was very, very effortless Elsa for her, it seemed, even though she was pregnant. And what's special about this production is also that I had watched Gemma in this space perform as Elphaba in Wicked when it came that many years ago to Singapore. And it was nice to see her come back to a lead role, and to watch her again, because I remember liking her Elphaba. The other thing is, an interesting thing is also that a lot of actresses kind of follow the footsteps of Idina Menzel, because she played the original Elphaba and has played Elsa in the animated version of Frozen. So in some sense, if you have a voice range for Elphaba, you would have a voice range for Elsa, right? Oh, they both start with EL as well. Elphaba and Elsa. I just realized this. So but of course, Casey Levi was the one who originated the role of Elsa on Broadway, and then went on. Did she do West End? No, I don't think she did. Samantha Barks is there right now. So enough on that. Let's move on to another special thing about this production. Aside from Gemma being, back in the space, this is the first time I'm watching a professional production with a student in it. Well, not the first time. Sound of Music came to Singapore, and also my student Jessica was in it. Fantastic work. But I guess it's extra special because it's Disney. Now, what's interesting is that because I paid more attention, my student being in the show, I realized that these kids, right, who play young Elsa and Anna, actually have quite a bit of screen time or stage time. They're quite a lot involved. They're actually listed as main cast in the credits, not ensemble, and they do handle a huge portion of the show. And for Singaporean kids, some of whom hadn't had any training, this is pretty awesome. Of course, my student has had training, but the other Anna that I watched, I only watched one pair, of course, actually had no training, and she was excellent. She was shining on stage for someone with no training. It was amazing. She was doing her groove, yeah, and of course, when you compare it to what I've noticed on the West End or Broadway, you can see that this particular Anna, of course, is untrained, so her timing is a little bit off. There are certain things that can be more polished. Um, and it's not to say that the ones on Broadway or West End were great. I actually didn't notice they could have been great, but for me, it's like if you're not great, you stick out more than if you're great, if you know what I mean. And so for the ones on the West End and Broadway, it didn't stick out for me. But in terms of the Singapore Anna, she did stick out a little bit. Overall, if she had training, I would think she has so much potential, and she already has such chops to take the show away. She handled the fixer upper scenes really well. It's a whole full number. She's on stage the whole time, even though not the focus all the time. So in any case, that was really special having a student, being so proud of her, little Sophie Liu playing young Elsa. Just my dream, right? Not to play young Elsa, but to be in something as professional as Frozen and a Disney production. Amazing. So proud of her. Sophie, I hope you consider musical theater as a career when you grow up. Also, your American accent is amazing. Like teacher, like student, right? So I do a code switch. Of course, I'm Singaporean. There is a Singaporean accent, but when I act, and I've had training, I've gone to New York. I've worked on IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet for American Standard Accent. But Sophie has had none, and she's doing an American accent pretty well. Her diction was clear, and also the intentions and meanings of her speech were very good. I mean, like I feel she can do voiceovers too, like me. um, okay, so the other thing was Australians also. Most of them were part of this cast. They did really well. Did not hear a trace of any Australian accent. It's something I always wonder about too. I think it's harder for Americans to do an Australian accent, but probably from an Australian point of view, doing an American accent is easier. So, but still, credit to the Australian cast. Equally good performances. I in fact had an issue with Frozen the musical because Elsa's "Let It Go" actually comes very early in the movie, and there's no other place to put it by the end of Act One, which is in the middle of the show for the musical, right? And so that means that the storytellers in the adaptation have to drag out that front part, and some of it was dragged out with Hans's um, solo song, Hans of the Southern Isles. Um, and I felt the length when I first watched it, but somehow the Singapore version, I did not feel that they were, drawing it out. So I'm not sure. Maybe it was just context. I'm not sure if they fixed the script. I don't know it well enough, but that's something to take note of. That they, that Let It Go is much further back in the musical, and they do have to drag out moments. They made it work, and all in all, I truly enjoyed it. Didn't expect to enjoy it that much. And also, the last thing was that I promised to talk about was the fountain show, right? So the fountain show. Before that, just want to show you that I wore my Frozen shirt. They didn't sell this at merchandise. They had other shirts, but this is a really nice shirt. They do have their own merchandise in Singapore, and this is her scepter. And if you see closely, there's actually two girls facing each other, Elsa and Anna, presumably, in this T-shirt. Love this shirt. Got it at a discount too because I used to work at merchandise for Mary Poppins, and my manager was there on Broadway, and I got that discount. Always having some Disney connections, right? In any case, the fountain show. Unfortunately, it was a bit disappointing. I wonder who plans these things, because when the show started, they had a projection of a picture on the water spray, right, of the fountain, and that picture stayed there for quite a while, and the music was playing, and there really wasn't much going on with the water or the pictures. So I thought initially I had missed, or I was missing something that was happening, but in front of me, blocked by people in front of me. I tried to see something, but there was at the end of the day, there was really nothing going on in the front. So I thought it was a bit of a lazy put together of a show, because when Let It Go finally played, I expected the fountains, the water to dance a bit more, the colors to change a bit more. It stayed in the same purple blue. The sprays were not going up or down. It was just consistent, and the music was just doing all that work, and there was nothing visually to focus on. I thought they could have had some video and that projection of pictures, a change of pictures, or some kind of dialogue, because all of it was just instrumental. Something to talk about the show, maybe some behind the scenes, maybe some snippets of dialogue from the musical, something that the castle shows that Disneyland's do, which make it so exciting. So that was a disappointment. So I really wonder who's in charge of this. um, was it Base Entertainment? Was it Marina Bay Sands? And Disney, like what they thought of it, how much did they give creative control over to whom, and how it got passed. uh so like, Disney, if you're watching, hire me. I'm like, it's so easy. I would volunteer to even help with certain creative aspects of the show, like having a beginning, middle, end, just something, a journey for the audiences to watch. And the other thing was, of course, let me go grab it right now. I do have the program for Frozen right here. I had to buy it. This is the Australian cast. I think the pictures are from the Australian run. Very, very happy and very proud to say that Sophie is in it, my little student hamster, she calls herself. So if you look closely, well, it's really hard to get this to appear on the screen. If you look closely, you can see that she credited me as her vocal teacher, which is really a nice thing. I mean, my name's never appeared in a Frozen program, so that is a cool thing. And also, just to touch a little bit quickly on my misunderstandings with Base Entertainment, there's, there, I'll put a link to the Aladdin Gala video. When Aladdin came to Singapore, there were some misunderstandings, and I guess this is nice that it included. It shows, like, the industry and how connected we all are, and how we should always just be nice to each other. So all in all, this was a very fun thing to happen, Frozen coming to Singapore, and I was glad I caught it. Until the next review, take care. It's DisneyDwayne over and out. Do like and subscribe. Bye.